right, everybody come on in and sit down. We need to get started. It's a beautiful day. We don't want to spend all day in here, right? So that's right. Okay, I am Kim Dupre. I am the co-vice chair of St. Croix Cures, along with Bud, and Dr. Sue Curtis is our president. We'll meet the crowd here in a little bit. But we want to get started today on time and try to be respectful of everybody's time today. So St. Croix Cures is a group that's formed, I think, in 2022, and that was mainly around the New Richmond digester to start with. But we also have a core belief of clean environment. We have our over here that you can look at. We also have a table. We envision living in a beautiful landscape, a healthy environment, and a prosperous community, united by desire for environmental and economic sustainability based on scientific management of our natural resources. And there's other things you can learn about Cures at the table out there. And one of our sponsors, or a good sponsor, is Wisconsin Farmers Union. And I have Tara Griffin here today, and she'll do a little introduction.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It's really great to have people here. I'm here on behalf of the Wisconsin Farmers Union, where our mission is to promote rural vitality and protect... I always get this note. Thank you. Our mission is to protect rural vitality and quality of life through our triangle, which is cooperation, legislation, and the honor of the base of that triangle is education, which I think is this is why this event lines up so closely with us. We are a big tent organization, so we have a huge diversity of membership, from non-farmers who just support rural quality of life and the farming way of life to active farmers of many different sizes. Just as a heads up for what the Farmers Union is, we're a grassroots-based organization with chapter membership, so thank you so much to the St. Croix County chapter that's here. You can meet some of our fabulous members outside, of whom Kim is one as well. And all of our policy, everything that we do for the Farmers Union is based on what our membership tells us. So these chapters come together, they form resolutions on what we should be doing as a state in terms of putting our energy behind. And then based on that policy, which I have to say is the most democratic process I have ever seen volunteers take part in, and robust discussion, they come to terms with what we need to support, and then we bring that to the Capitol as well through lobby days, as well as through our government office, which is in Madison, and also to Washington, D.C. But we also do programming like this around the state and support of farmers to meet those goals. So that's, again, that legislation is part of it, but it also comes from us cooperating and teaching ourselves so we can get the best outcomes. So thank you so much for having me today. And I'm just so grateful to Cures and everybody else who's spending their Saturday here to talk about this.
We also want to acknowledge the City of Hudson, who is also a sponsor. And we also want to acknowledge the St. Croix Valley Foundation, who is also a sponsor of our event today. Now, I would also like all of our Cures members to stand up so everybody can see who you are. If you're a Cures member, stand up. Give these people an applause. They did a lot of work today to make this all happen. So thank you to all of you. Thank you very, very much. So let's see, it's Michael Menor here. There he is. We're going to have Michael lead the group here. This is Stillwater and Synergy. And so Michael, come on up. And
all right, good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming. Grew up in the St. Croix Valley, moved here in 1969. We built our house. Our family just is out the Big Fort. Blueberry Hill, if anybody you know where that is, the Road Swing Bridge, right just north of the 5th, Center for the Arts in Hudson. So I grew up there, and we moved from the northwest part of the Twin Cities Metro. And then first, a young boy and his siblings, we had all this farmland, and we also had the river just over the edge. Yeah, we had hunting dogs, and it was just a tremendous area for us to kind of just break loose. So we were avid water skiers, fishermen, fisherwomen, whatever you call it, and we had a wonderful experience with the St. Croix. I then left for decades, come back every once in a while for a little bit, and as time went on, you can notice things change little by little. I finally moved back permanently. I bought the homestead and have been here since 2006, and as time has gone on, I started realizing this subject of sustainability was becoming a key element of everybody's daily conversation. So I took what I had learned in my journey and professionally and personally in life and started thinking, well, how can I apply what I'm doing here? And that is in the area of advanced visualization technologies. But I didn't want to run a project that was solely about the technology. It was about all of us. And to try to inspire us to use a language that transcends generations, experience, education, you name it. A common language that would help reveal the fundamental aspects of the challenges that we're facing or the opportunities we're trying to discover or expand upon. So they asked me to do this segment on the why. Why are we here? I look at these maps and it's pretty compelling, but those are just surface level. It's a two-dimensional representation of a richer problem that's really 4 dimensions. You've got changes over time. You have different elements and aspects that affect things not just above ground, but below ground. So what we've decided to do, this one. There we go. So what we decided to do is build a prototype. We found, we were fortunate to obtain some grant monies and get started on a little experiment to try to see if bringing this information to life through a different lens can affect a couple of things. Number one, get our attention more efficiently. We are so stretched in so many different directions with social media and different groups. Everybody has their own website, their own media page. We just don't physically have time to mentally keep up with all of this. So the opportunity before us was to see, well, how do we start fusing all of these different sources into a place that leverages the efficiencies of the human mind, the human brain. So we're leveraging some of the same aspects that the video game technologies take advantage of for entertainment. That's kind of the long and short of it. A couple of key things here. We'll talk about CAFOs today and obviously the proposed hog farm. We were able to get that data, or at least some of it. This is old. This was some of the initial proposals that was put to the Wisconsin DNR, but it shows the distribution footprint of the proposed 9 million gallons of pig waste over that acreage up to the north. The point of this is to show that this is a whole ecosystem, that those of us downstream are just as much a part of the conversation as those in the immediate vicinity of those types of facilities. The big cloud to the lower left are the contaminated wells, or they call them wells and exceedants from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Just an example of a couple of the things that I keep using the wrong computer. Just a couple of examples of some of the data that we can bring to life in this. Now, the project is fixed on all of us, commoners, and I use that term with great pride because we have many structured organizations, entities, and such trying to do their different parts with regarding to the watershed, but yet there isn't much of an orchestration, and that's what is missing. In tandem with this, these guys, in order for us to engage with them, we needed to figure out how we could engage it in their conversations with their tools and their technologies. So we took it upon ourselves to learn Minecraft. Many of you are aware of the power of that tool. So we figured out a way to bring Google Maps data in the St. Croix Valley into Minecraft at scale and put it to work. So we're in effect bringing reality into fantasy land, but we're working on real issues. This is an example of the proposed Lake Elmo school, elementary school that they're building right now. It's not our design, but we didn't ask permission, so we just went on our own, but tried to use fundamental design principles in science and engineering to figure out what would it look like if we had the reins of this. So that's what this is about. Our partnership is with Synergy and the Stillwater school districts, but frankly, we're trying to open this to both sides of the river. We talk about sustainability in the context of future generations. Our argument is we want their voice and hand and footprints on this right now. So that's kind of what this is all about. You'll see more later when we have our conversations out on the floor. With that, I'll turn it over to you, and let's hear what you guys have to say.
Hi, I'm Julie Boffans. I am the Technology Innovation and Youth Engagement Specialist for Stillwater School Districts. And I have been working with, I have been working with students trying to create an intergenerational kind of an ecosystem where we have near peer mentors, we connect with community mentors, and getting the kids focused on how do we design for belonging, connection, wellness, joy, and sustainability for our community? And the kids are coming at it from so many different directions. So we have kids that are doing theater, they're doing art, they're doing robotics, they are doing e-textiles, and they're making upcycled clothing that some of the kids, like this is an example of an eco-fairy costume that Grace is working on. And then we have environmental sensors. That are embedded in this citizen science costume. And so then Grace is actually is leading a team of elementary students. Sorry. She is leading a group to think about how we can bring edu-LARPing, live action role playing to bear in this, so we can be collecting citizen science data as the kids are playing out in the forest. And so we are engaging kids of all ages across 10 buildings. Wow, so like the okay, so we are engaging students 3rd grade through 12th grade, and in trying to kind of urge some different groups and build a collaboration. So this is Lily.
And dogs.
So this is Lily, and she'd like to say a few words. We want to hear hi.
Hi, my name is Lily Zemek. I am not with Synergy, but I have been invited out by these wonderful people. It's my first year in FFA. I'm currently also 11 years into my Girl Scouts. I'm here speaking for FFA. I wanted to tell you about kind of how we integrate the younger generation, even if you're not currently in livestock. I'm not currently in livestock. I do a little bit with it, but as I go on, I hope to go into livestock for my career. That's most of the people. We try to look towards the future with the younger generations, not how you are right now, but how you want to be when you grow up. And there needs to be a change in how we treat our planet, how we farm, how we create what we want for the future. We try our best to make sure that we can integrate those younger generations and those younger kids into livestock so they can have a say for what their future looks like, for what they want and how they want the world to be when they grow up. As I also said, I am 11 years into my Girl Scouts journey. I'm currently a cadet, and I'm bridging into a full-fledged senior, or the official Girl Scout title. We, as Girl Scouts, live by the Girl Scout law and the Girl Scout promise. If you've ever been a Girl Scout, most women have. I know at least one of you has when you were little, when you were younger. Probably remember that. It hasn't changed much. What we live by is we always want to leave a space better than we found it. But we also want to leave the world better than we found it. The world we live in right now, we see differences in climate change every single day. It's 90 degrees in October, so I think we've all kind of noticed. What we can do now is we have the means to do it. We just need to have the power of the younger generation to really lead us into a better world for tomorrow. As a Girl Scout, I have done many things for conservation of water. I, with my troop of 5 girls, created a rain garden to help have a fully self-sustaining garden at the Lagamaga Troop House down in Bayport. A lot of you know where that is. If you don't, it's really beautiful down there. Really recommend it. We also have done quite a few things out there. If you know the Gaga pit that's down there, we also made that. But we lead by trying to make the world better and better than we found it. And I hope that this whole generation of minds and this generation of children that we try to bring into this agriculture and this way of life almost, that they can learn to leave the world better than they found it and make a better world for the world that they're going to live in and many generations to come. Thank you all so much.
Hi, my name is Grace, and
What if you're called?
some people But first of all, some people think I'm a misfit. They think I'm a weirdo. But that's not the truth. I'm really just different. People of any kind can change the world. I have autism and ADHD, and I'm gifted. And these are some of the inspirational things I've already done. Technological development is the key to unlocking our potential, fueling innovation, and achieving sustainable growth. Do you want to hear a quote by me? If you believe, you're already there. If you're not believing, you'll never get there.
Say.
And if you've read those quotes by the side, they're important too. Because, do you want to know what I've learned? Everything is all connected. And it doesn't matter who you are. And being different doesn't mean your voice doesn't count. I'm Sebastian DeLone. You can call me Seabass because I love fishing, anything to do with water, which is why I decided to focus on water. And so we built this underwater robot that we got from the University of Minnesota, the U of M, and we built it, me, my friend, and there's other kids who played Minecraft were just in that picture. That person right next to the front in the Adidas shirt, that he helped me. He isn't here right now, but he'll be here soon. His name is Zaraf. Me and him worked on this underwater robot, and just yesterday at Synergy Club, we waterproofed it, and so now it's ready. And in that little container you'll see at the front of the robot is a bunch of sensors and anything that can collect data that we can use to help our wildlife and water. So then we are going to plan to bring that to a lake that might need help with water sustainability, and we can use it to get down where other things can't underwater. We can use that thing to collect data to make that water so much better. And then we'll have less sicknesses, because my mom used to grew up in here in Minnesota, and she would have friends and family members and just people in the neighborhood. They would get sick, including like cancer from those polluted wells that Mr. Manor showed us on the graph. And so we just want to work to help get the water nice and clean, or as clean as possible. And so we built that. And then at the back, you see the propellers at the back, that little chip is actually made of wood that we laser cut, and then the sensors are on that, and all we have to do is put it in that container and send it down, and we can collect all of our data to make all the water cleaner.
All right, that's why we're here, is for the next generation, right? So we'll start off with our first panel, and that is Dr. Steve Oberle. You get to be up first. Yeah. So Dr. Steve, for the sake of the video, I will read his bio here. He's an experienced philosopher, ecologist, farmer, conservationist, gardener, educator, consultant, writer, scientist, among others. He's a Renaissance man, in other words. Demonstrated history of working in public service, academia, and consulting. Demonstrated leadership in land and water policy and program development. Environmental analysis review, working with the public and citizens and community groups, the tribes, local units of government, among others. He has a PhD, an MA, and an MS from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and a BS cum laude from the University of Maryland, College Park. So Dr. Oberle, sounds like quite the credentials. Come share with us.
Kim told me earlier that since I'm first on the program, I get about an hour, don't I? Kim. Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with you. I'd like to start off by saying a big thanks to Kim Dupre, my dear friend, and the planning committee for this forum for inviting me to be a part of it. Also, I'm really impressed and inspired by our young kids. You know, when I was a county conservationist in Taylor County, we did a lot of programs with the children, and I really miss that. And I guess I'd like to thank them for being here, thank the parents and the teachers. This presentation is really dedicated to them and their future. And from what I'm seeing, it's a bright future indeed. So, good thing. If you, we have to go back.
Go back again.
If you bother to look at the program, Tim and I are first on the list here, and we're tasked with talking about where are we at with water quality. Since my background is in surface water and groundwater, and since most everybody here probably gets their drinking water from groundwater, I thought it would be good to emphasize groundwater. So that's basically what I'm going to emphasize. And we're going to stick pretty close to the St. Croix River watershed and talk a little bit about the karst regions, which are probably the most vulnerable in terms of groundwater and drinking water contamination. Okay, Kim. So, can you hear me okay? No? Some key concepts and messages. Those of us that work in groundwater, we refer to groundwater as the invisible resource or the buried treasure. And I'm pretty sure that most people, just like in Wisconsin, most people in Minnesota get their drinking water from groundwater. Everybody on the planet needs clean and safe drinking water. And in Wisconsin, as I said, in Minnesota, most people get their drinking water from groundwater, and that's why we call it the buried treasure. Okay, Kim. So again, everyone needs clean and safe drinking water, but that does not always mean that it's easily accessible or even affordable. I did a assignment recently in Africa, over in Ethiopia, and we met these women collecting water. I don't know if you can see how steep that hill is that they have to go up to get water. And that just showed me that water isn't always very easily accessible. Okay, Kim. All right. So I want to spend, if you go back one, I want to spend a little time with this one, especially because it sets the stage for the rest of the presentation. Basically, in my view, groundwater quality is a public health issue. And some of you may have tested your wells, may have tested your water for nitrates. We use nitrates as an environmental indicator when it comes to groundwater. And I'll get into that a little more later. That's separate from what I look at in terms of groundwater availability and quantity, which I guess I view as a public safety issue. Now try and imagine in the future, especially, all of the quantities of water we'll be using for our cities, for our villages. In St. Croix and Pierce County especially, you're going to see a lot of, probably, if you're not already, subdivisions in your area. And then all the water we'll need for essential services, government, for businesses, for hospitals, that sort of thing. For firefighting, can you imagine being in a situation where you're in a village and there's a fire and you don't have the water to put it out? That's a real public safety issue. And it really emphasizes to me the need for good program and a long-term program on water conservation. We talk a lot about water quality, but we don't often talk a lot about water availability in the future and the need for good water conservation. So the not so good news is that we continue to face some very serious groundwater and drinking water quality and availability challenges, and in turn public health and safety in Wisconsin and Minnesota, and also locally in the St. Croix River watershed, especially, as I'll talk a little bit later, in the highly vulnerable karst regions. The really good news about all this, at least from my point of view, is that I've been in water quality a lot of years, and I can tell you that probably over 95% of the issues that I've dealt with, that I've seen, are predictable. Well, that means to me then that they're also preventable. And that's good news. That's real good news. Okay, Kim. So one analogy that you're going to need to I guess if you're not aware of it already, one thing that will help you understand groundwater a little bit better is this analogy. Watershed is to a water body as a well recharge area is to a well. In other words, in a watershed, the water falls in the watershed. If some of that gets into the local water body, that's a watershed. Well, recharge area is somewhat analogous to that because the water that gets into your well and into the groundwater falls within the recharge area of that well. And it'll become a little more apparent what I'm talking about a little later in the presentation. Go ahead, Kim. This is a graphic, a really nice graphic from St. Croix 360 on the St. Croix River watershed. Now, from the water cycle, we know that groundwater originates as precipitation, rain and snow and other forms of precipitation. And over time, some of that water that doesn't run off, that doesn't taken up by plants, some of that water eventually seeps through the soil and then eventually becomes groundwater. And then that also, besides providing our drinking water, serves as a base flow for all the local rivers, streams, lakes, wetlands, that sort of thing. So it's a really huge watershed, and it's good to know, and I often talk with the young kids about, well, do you know what watershed you're in? That's good to know, and I hope people know that, because by knowing your watershed, and especially knowing the recharge area for your own well or for your any public wells, that's a good way to start in terms of, I guess I call it pollution prevention, trying to prevent that groundwater from becoming contaminated in the first place. Okay, Kim. This is a graphic from the Wisconsin Geological Natural History Survey on karst. And remember what I said before about karst being the most vulnerable in terms of groundwater contamination. Basically, karst is a landscape created when water seeping through the soil dissolves rocks below. And groundwater in these karst areas is very vulnerable to contamination, especially when you have very thin layers of soil over the top of that karst. And I've seen areas of the state now, mostly on the east side of the state, where you only have maybe a foot or two of soil. Well, that's not going to do much to filter out any contaminants before they get in the groundwater. So the worst case scenario would be karst and a very thin layer of soil over the top. Okay, go ahead, Kim. This is a graphic showing that karst in the winter. You can see the fractures below the snow, below the soil. And the reason you see that is there's a difference in temperature. And it shows those fractures very, very well. That's another expression of a karst landscape, those fractures in the rock below. Okay, Kim. Karst and groundwater. Karst aquifers are exceptionally vulnerable, as I mentioned before, for two main reasons. Groundwater flow in these this hydrogeology is very, very rapid. In some cases, we're talking about groundwater moving and the contaminants that are in it up to 10 to 100 feet per day. Also, these carbonate rocks and karst systems, they don't really do a very good job of filtering or removing pollutants, especially, again, if you have a very thin layer of soil over the top. Okay, go ahead, Kim. Remember what I said about that analogy. Watersheds are to water bodies as well recharge areas are to wells. This is a diagram showing a recharge area for that well. And basically, the only thing I wanted to mention as far as this goes is all the land uses and management practices in that recharge area are going to, over time, somehow probably influence the groundwater and the water quality of that well. Those circles that you see heading out from the well, that basically gives you what's called the time of travel for contaminants to reach that well. And what that basically means is that if you go to the outer circle, let's say the groundwater became contaminated at this point, it would basically take 25 years to go from here to the well. And as you get closer, of course, less time. And in karst, probably a lot less time. The other thing I'd like to point out is depending on the depth of the well, you're going to have an area immediately around the well where that well is drawing water from all directions. So it's really good to know and to pay attention to the land uses, especially in the immediate vicinity of that well. And also your home well if you're on a private well. Okay, Kim. This is a graphic showing the village of Roberts. I wanted to get a little closer to home for us. This is also in the St. Croix River watershed over in St. Croix. You can see the 3 well locations. So you can bet that the land uses around those wells, just like in that well recharge area graphic, that's really going to make a big difference over time in terms of the water quality of those wells. And some of you may not be aware, but the village of Roberts and the surrounding town just put out a land use plan for the future. And it's interesting when you look at the land uses around the village and in the village, and you can kind of predict, well, what's that going to do for the water quality of those wells? Go ahead, Kim. One really good source of information for confirming if a well is in karst or not, or other information about the well, are these well construction reports. And I would urge you, especially if you're testing your own private well, that you obtain a copy. They're very easy to get online or from your well driller or from DNR. Get a copy of your well construction report. These are 2 well construction reports for the village of Roberts. And you can see and confirm this is the geology that they drilled through. You can see the limestone and confirm that that well is indeed in karst. The other thing the well construction report will tell you is the depth of the well, the age of the well, and its productivity. This one has a specific capacity of 40. That's a good number, and I guess, again, I urge you to look at your own well construction reports if you're on a private well. A lot of good information. Okay, Kim. Now, these are the well recharge areas for the village of Roberts. So again, looking at the land uses of that area that they call the recharge area for those wells is going to give you some indication of the long-term, I guess, outlook in terms of the water quality of those wells. Okay, go ahead, Kim. This is some data we got from Tim in the county there showing the nitrate levels in those same wells for the village of Roberts. And you can see those nitrate levels just continue to increase. Background nitrate levels, if you don't know, here in Wisconsin, and I'm pretty sure probably in Minnesota, there's some discussion and some, I guess, debate about it, but I would think it's safe to assume that background nitrate levels are between 0.2 and 2 parts per million here in Wisconsin and in Minnesota. So anything above that, you can safely say that somehow that well's been impacted by human activity. The other thing I want to mention about nitrate, because I know a lot of you are doing nitrate testing, if you have nitrate levels above 2 especially, that's a good indication, and that's why we call it an environmental indicator, that there's a pathway for nitrate to get in your well. There's also a pathway for other things that may be getting into your well, things that you're not even testing for. So I guess I would encourage you to consider the land uses around your well, consider what might be in there, and maybe in addition to nitrate testing, you want to do some other types of testing. Okay, Kim. Last but not least, the availability of safe and clean groundwater and drinking water should never be taken for granted. Groundwater and drinking water contamination are usually detected by routine testing, which is a good thing. But unfortunately, by the time you find it in your well, it's too late, basically. That's why pollution prevention is such an important thing. And again, predictable means preventable. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. One of my favorite quotes in terms of water quality and groundwater quality especially. And this for our children and our youth. Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember, you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars and change the world. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve. Tim, I will read this here for the sake of the cameras here. Tim is currently the county conservationist for St. Croix County. He has worked in agronomy and water quality protection for almost 40 years in positions with Oregon State University, University of Idaho, in the private sector, and directing county conservation programs. And a shout out to Patty Schrank, who is back there doing the water testing. She's the water resource specialist for St. Croix County and just took on this role a year ago and focuses on ground and surface water quality as well as the drinking water program. So, are you ready?
I'm born ready, Kim. Thanks for the invitation to come, and I work with many of you out in the crowd, so it's great to see people. You got to go back one. So I'm going to talk, I'm going to focus in on kind of applied work that we're doing in a portion of St. Croix County, or on what we call the Kinney Headwaters area. What do I hit?
I'll do it.
You can do it. I'm like multitasking. I'm pretty good. Anyway, we're going to focus on some work we're doing in the Kinney Headwaters area that is of special interest, and we got some grant money to work there, and it'll become apparent why we're working there. But the approach that we're taking there is very similar to the approach that's used for surface water TMDL type budget preparation. And then once you have that established, you can then start to reduce and try to get to your goal. So I'll go through what we're doing, and it has application anywhere in this area, okay? So just quickly going over, nitrate is a big concern. I think anything over 1 parts per million is man-caused. And basically it's like Steve was saying, the higher your nitrate, the higher likelihood that you have other products in your water. And we have a lot of data on that I won't belabor at the moment. But we do have excellent data to show the higher your nitrate, the more concern you should have in your well water safety. Next slide. I'm happy to say that I don't have to do this alone. This is not our problem. This is a large problem. This is data from the state. Every year, the Wisconsin Coordinating Council goes to the legislature and gives basically the same report that we have big problems. And then we go back and we don't do a hell of a lot. But that's the God's honest truth. If you go back and print all of those reports to the legislature, they add 50 to 100 water bodies to the list of impaired waters, and they take about 5 off. So if you do the math on that, we're losing big time. In the last report, 2024, it shows way more municipal wells are increasing in nitrate than are actually decreasing. There's a whole bunch that are staying the same, thank God. And according to that report, about 90% of that is from agriculture. And that's, you can quote that, so you don't have to quote me from now on. You can quote the Wisconsin Coordinating Council. You don't have to trust my data. Next slide. So basically, we're fighting the same problem that everyone else is fighting in the state and in Minnesota as well. Same data. The reason we got the money to do this plan was because of those municipal wells. Someday are going to go over 10, and I can tell you, and I've got people here from Roberts that tell you they don't have the money to fix that. They clearly do not. They're too busy doing other things. Okay. This is what we're like in that particular area. Right now, that particular area of St. Croix County has over 30% of the wells over the drinking water standard. This is domestic wells. As a matter of fact, that center area of headwaters is 38.5% of the wells are over 10 parts per million. And basically, that whole area of the study is 24%. The whole county averages about 13%. Next slide. So this area is a particular problem. All the water in that area basically comes from the Prairie du Chien watershed, or aquifer, which is a karst feature. That one deep well there is, I got this slide from Village of Roberts, basically. They're trying to basically drill past the problem and get into a deeper aquifer, because that's really the only way you're going to get clean water. They went down 195 feet, and they still had 9.5 parts per million nitrates. So all those other little wells that you see that are shallow, that's your average person. You don't have enough money to drill 350 feet, you know. People drill 125 feet, they got a lot of water, but it's going to have stuff in it. Next slide. Karst geology is great because it's a great water feature. You get great water output out of those wells. However, it's very unfiltered. One good thing, I think, one bad thing about it, I should say, is it defies traditional hydrologic models. You can't just use the USGS model because that's what they told us to use. We send people to training and it doesn't work. I believe we can clean up the aquifer faster than traditional models, traditional aquifers. That's the one good thing about it. Next slide. So we went about a process to determine first the nitrate load that's going on, that's giving us these nitrates in the water. We looked at the sources. We looked at a range of scenarios of BMPs. We looked at what level of adoption would we have to get change on the landscape for in the groundwater in this area. And then at the last, I looked at how much is that going to cost. Next slide. So to do this load calculation, I put it on an annual basis. I ignored denitrification because I don't think it's that big of a factor for this particular situation. We looked at 5-year land use averages. We assumed that we have basically a stable aquifer here because infiltration is basically equal to discharge based on samples or on wells that we monitor. And they're not going up, they're not going down. They change about, 3 feet over 30 years. That's not very much change. So basically we're in equilibrium there. And we have assumed about 7 inches of infiltration per year based on the numbers that I have there. And we also did not take into account, although it would always be a factor, and that is the lag effect. If we make changes, if we all just leave the country, it's still going to have high nitrates for a while. It's going to take a while. Fix this. Next slide. So the load calculation that I did originally, I utilized 619 samples that we've collected in this particular watershed area. And we were able to do calculations, and it comes up to some just humongous a number, 750,000 pounds of nitrate coming in. How ridiculous am I there? Well, I know how many acres of corn I have and how many acres of soybeans I have, and I know the standard numbers of leaching for those crops, and guess what? It comes out really close. So I knew I wasn't too far off. Okay, next slide. I'm getting ahead of my slide person. Next, we use some of those new technologies that we're so happy about, that would making life frustrating and fun at the same time. We basically use spatial analyst tools in ArcGIS where we can look at, it's very difficult to get numbers that you need. You can get numbers for a whole state, how much corn, how much soybean, but to get it in a very specific area where you also have good groundwater data is very difficult. But that's not true now with spatial analysts. You can carve out any size of project you want, and you can find out what's in those areas. It makes this kind of research very easy, or much easier. So we can look at, we don't have to look at the soil survey and say, well, what's our soil types in this whole county? We can look at the actual places where corn is grown. What are the actual soil types in those fields? And so it makes this kind of budgeting approach feasible. Next. And so Patty did all that work. I will not pretend to be an expert on that. Thank God for Patty. So in our area, we've got about 67,000 acres of land, and it's about 84% agriculture. 9% developed, very low amount of natural land, and just a small amount of water and barren area. Next slide. But we were able to break down what are the sources, going to be the sources of nitrate. So we were able to get the exact acres of corn, soybeans, alfalfa. I was able to look at the manure plans in our nutrient management plans to figure out how much manure goes on those fields, how many septic systems we have. We were able to derive all this data. I was able to do a Freedom of Information Act request and get all the septage application data from DNR. That only took about 6 months. They told me I had to pay for it. And it got to the end, it was like drum roll, it was like $50. I'm like, my God. So we sent them $50 and we got 25 years of septage application data, which took me about 5 months to crunch. Then we also looked at lawn fertilizer, because I always have people that want to blame other things, and they do. They blame lawn, but I calculated that in there too, because of spatial analysts. I could tell you how much lawn we have. Next slide. So not to get into all the numbers, but basically we were able to build a budget where we attribute these numbers to the sources that I identified. Also, on the bottom is the comparison of how close we got to the load calculation from water, where we actually looked at the resource and said, what's the load? Remember on the slide, a couple slides back, we got within a couple tenths of a percent, in some cases, to 2% to predicting. So this became my baseline. Next slide. Then we applied scenarios. So we used the baseline. We did a worst case scenario because, you got to kind of, worst case can happen. Worst case could happen if we suddenly decide, hey, let's grow corn and make airplane fuel out of it. That's been talked about because, everybody loves corn. America has a love affair with corn, and that's a whole side topic I'd love to talk about. What if we doubled the amount of manure? Well, that would happen instantly if we did one more CAFO in our area. What if we had 10% more homes? All those contribute nitrate to this system. That's my worst case scenario. What if we got 50% adoption of BMPs in our area? So basically we had nitrogen BMPs for corn, lower application rates of manure on in those plans, and then adoption of cover crop. And then the 90% option was just higher level, and then full conservation is like, you got to throw that one in there because, person's got a dream. That's what the kids are telling us. So I had to dream, so I did full conservation. I dreamed that one up when I was sitting out on the lake. We're going to do full conservation. What the hell is going to happen if we do everything? Okay, next. I should point out, though, on those scenarios, I did not change 1 acre of production. So this is very consistent with what we have. You wouldn't know if you drove around out there Nothing would change, but it'd just be better management of what we have. These scenarios, when applied, either increase the amount of nitrate by about 20% with the worst case. Basically, the baseline stays about the same. Reduce by about 20%, and then almost 50%, and then 57%. So we're able to take those loads, which is the key to this whole thing, whether you're working on surface water or working on groundwater. If you say you want to do something, you have to say, well, how much does that help? This tool that we've developed, basically, we take the load, we can put it backwards through the model, we can tell you what the groundwater would be if we implemented these BMPs. So next slide tells us that. If we do the worst case, we buy into big corn, we're going to go for it. Some of those areas would exceed the average drinking water would exceed the drinking water standard. I don't know what DNR would do. They aren't doing a hell of a lot now, but would see, maybe they get excited. But that particular headwaters area would be 11 parts per million. Right now it's 9.3, so you don't have very far to go. And then those averages would go down based on those levels of implementation. Next slide. This has real implications for actual people that live in this area and drink water. The far right column is the number of homes that would be over 10. Right now it's 492. This is not the county data. This is, I think it's 1,200 homes or something if they do the whole county. This is just a little dinky area between Roberts and Hammond. Right now there's 490 people that don't meet the drinking water standard. So you can decrease the number of homes that are exposed and the average percentage over by implementing these BMPs. Next. And then in order to actually do that, you would need to target some specific areas, have multi-year funds, have technical assistance, outreach plan, all those things that go into doing the work that we do. Next. Seems like it's going to cost a lot of money, you know, $300,000 a year, $1.5 million just to do the 50%, which is probably what I'll ask for when I get done with this plan. Next slide. Alternatives we talk about a lot. It would cost $9.8 million to replace those wells, just in that little area, not the whole county. I think the whole county was 20 million. I think we calculated that one time. It would cost us $400,000 just to do a real simple RO system in that area, and about $1.75 million to do all the homes in that area with an RO for a whole home system. So the alternatives are expensive and they don't solve the problem. Next. So in conclusion, I was attempting to try to show how difficult and significant it is going to be to try to make a change. Agriculture is who we have to work with. Our aquifer that we have, that we rely on over most of the county of Prairie du Chien, is the primary aquifer. The answer is not drilling deeper. The answer is not necessarily treating, although I think treatment is critical for public health, but I don't think it solves our problem. And we can stop the increase and start a decrease by agricultural BMP implementation. Next. I think that's it.
Very good. Well, happy to be here today. This is a presentation I gave October 4th of 2025. I'm recording it here today, about 3 weeks later, and so I hope this all works out and people can get some information from this recording. My name is Chris Jones. I live in Iowa City, Iowa most of the time. Also live some in DeSoto, Wisconsin. I'm a retired research engineer from the University of Iowa, where I studied water quality and agricultural landscapes. And I continue to work and write. I'm the author of the book, The Swine Republic. You can see there on the left, and I write a Substack at riverraccoon.substack.com, where I write about these subjects, especially important in the Corn Belt of the United States, where we have these issues with pollution that link back to the corn soy production system and then CAFO agriculture. And so I'd invite you to check out the book and the Substack if you have time and are so inclined. And so my message 3 weeks ago and my message today to people in Wisconsin is don't be Iowa. It's clear that the corn soy CAFO machine would like to expand further into Wisconsin, and you got a tough row to hoe to keep it out of there. And so when we look at the St. Croix watershed, which is of most interest here today, we can look at the animals in the watershed, and so we can see there's 5 Huck 8s or hydrologic unit code 8 scale watersheds. When I look at the animal populations in each of those watersheds and I convert it to a human equivalent, we can see how much fecal waste is being excreted. And so we look at that bottom watershed, livestock are excreting the fecal waste equivalent to 2.2 million people. And so we look in total at the St. Croix watershed, there's enough livestock there to create the fecal waste of a little over 3 million people. And so this has impacts on water quality. And of course, I think everyone knows that the livestock industry would like to expand in this part of Wisconsin and Minnesota. And as I said, you don't want to be Iowa. And so here's what Iowa looks like, a similar map. When I look at all the Huck 8 watersheds in Iowa, I look at the livestock populations in those watersheds, I convert their fecal waste to a human equivalent. This is what it looks like. And so in Iowa, we have about 168 million people living here when we just consider the waste excreted from livestock. So all the livestock waste here is equivalent to what 168 million people would excrete. And so there's just no way this is not going to have an impact on our water, and it certainly has had in Iowa. And so the other big thing here I would tell you is when we lack diversification on our farms, that also leads to poor water quality. And so this is a very famous diagram created about 40 years ago that looks at a farm in Winnebago County, and that's in northern Iowa. And we see that farm on the left in 1941. There's a real diversity of land uses. And so we have some corn, but a lot of oats, some hay, a few acres in soybeans, pasture. We have wetlands, and we have woodlots. And then we fast forward to 1976, and that farm's almost all corn and soybean. There was still some hay and a few oats left in 1976, and of course that would be gone in the present day. And so when we only have 2 species of plants covering the land, we're never going to get the water quality that we want. And so we still see some farms, especially in western Wisconsin, that still have some diverse land uses. This is what Iowa looks like now, and to the casual observer, it all looks really clean. And so we see the clean rows of GMO crops of corn and soy at the top. We have about 8,000 CAFOs in Iowa, and so we have 25 million hogs. We have the most hogs of any state. You can drive across a state and never see a hog because they're all in these buildings on the horizon. Then we have the ethanol industry. And so, as I said, this all looks very clean to the average observer, but we know that this has consequences for our water. And so this is most connected to soil erosion on the landscape there in the left, and then the nutrient pollution, nitrogen and phosphorus from the corn and soy system, fertilization, both with commercial fertilizer and animal manures. We have a lot of impaired waters here in Iowa. All this farming that we do has taken its toll on our waters. We can see our lakes there in the summertime are almost unusable because we have such terrible blue-green algae blooms that are toxic to human beings at times and make the water really not appealing for us from an aesthetic point of view. You can see in the last 10 years, we have 555 impaired rivers and 127 lake impairments. We only have about 130 lakes, and so a lot of them are impaired. 80% of our monitored stream segments have been continuously impaired for at least 10 years. And so that would indicate we've made no progress in removing most of these impaired water bodies from the impaired list. 43% of our lakes have been impaired for at least 10 years, and we only have 15 stream segments in Iowa out of 70,000 miles of streams. Only 15 stream segments meet all their designated uses under the Clean Water Act. And so I say all the time, what we have here is a problem of scale. This is something our political leaders don't want to talk about. We have 70% of our land in corn and soy. Well, that's an enormous number for an area the size of the state of Iowa to have only 2 species in land cover, and they're annual species at that. We have 11,000 square miles, so about 20% of our state is used to grow corn for ethanol. We have 25 million hogs, as I said. We have 4 million beef cattle. About 80 million laying chickens. We're the #1 egg state. We're a big turkey state with 5 million turkeys. We also raise broiler chickens, 4 million of those. And then we have a sizable dairy industry in Iowa with almost 250,000 dairy cattle. And so can we get the environmental outcomes that we want when we're producing at this scale? And I would suggest that we cannot. This has had impact for our drinking water. We have 7,000 private wells in Iowa that have been contaminated with nitrate above the safe drinking water standard of 10 parts per million. Thousands more have been contaminated with E. coli. We have about 900 public water supplies in Iowa, municipal water supplies that have about 1/3 of those, so about 300 have been deemed vulnerable to nitrate contamination from our DNR. We have 60 public water supplies that are removing nitrate, and about 1/4 of all Iowans drink water that's been treated for nitrate removal. We've known about the health consequences of this system for a long time. It's only been in the last couple years that we've really talked about it, but the scientific literature shows us that there's been consequences for this production system for quite some time. For example, we've known for 24 years now that drinking nitrate-enriched water enhances the cancer risk for women in Iowa. This is 21 years ago. We know that kids that go to school and live near CAFOs have about double the risk of asthma in Iowa. This is thyroid cancer, published 15 years ago. Positive associations between drinking water nitrate, over 5 parts per million for more than 5 years, and thyroid cancer. This is 12 years ago. Mothers that consume water with more than 5 parts per million of nitrate, twice the risk of giving birth to a child with these birth defects. 11 years ago, over 3 parts per million nitrate in the water doubles the risk of ovarian cancer in Iowa women. 9 years ago, bladder cancer in Iowa women, 1.6 times the elevated risk, drinking water more than 5 parts per million. This is antibiotic-resistant staph infections. We've known for 9 years now that if you live within 1 mile of a CAFO, your risk of getting an antibiotic-resistant staph infection is doubled. This is Wisconsin. We know that between 111 and 298 cases of these cancers, colorectal, ovarian, thyroid, bladder, and kidney, correlate with high nitrate drinking water in Wisconsin. And then a year and a half ago, we see this news story come out that Iowa has the second highest cancer rate of any state in the United States, and we're the only state where the cancer rate is increasing. And so this begs the question, does this farming system contribute to a degradation of human health and increased incidence of disease in Iowa? Where I worked at the University of Iowa, we had our own water treatment plant on campus that provides water to the university and to the hospital. The treatment plant is there to train engineers in drinking water treatment. A few years ago, the university treatment plant, which takes water from the Iowa River, which is polluted with nitrate, had to install a reverse osmosis system to reduce nitrate to provide safe water to campus and the hospital because, again, the high nitrate in the Iowa River. But if you watch the University of Iowa football games on TV, what do we do at the end of the first quarter? Well, all the fans in the stadium, they turn and they wave to the kids in the children's hospital and that have cancer. And do we ever wonder why some of those kids are there? We do not. And then in Kinnick Stadium, which that's where the football games are played, these are the drinking fountains are right beneath this sign in Kinnick Stadium. Who do we let sponsor the drinking fountains in Kinnick Stadium? We see Iowa corn growers there. And so this is an example of how the big ag has intruded into our institutions and tried to affect public opinion, right? And so we see this all over the state. And so here's my book, The Swine Republic. I would invite you to take a look at this. There's a number of essays here that talk about these subjects, and I hope you can take a look at this.
Sonja Eayrs is a farmer's daughter, rural advocate, and attorney. She's also the author of Dodge County, Inc., Big Ag and the Undoing of Rural America from the University of Nebraska Press. The book was the recipient of the 2025 Midwest Book Awards, nonfiction category, and also a finalist for the 2025 Minnesota Book Awards. Sonja Eayrs is involved in several rural advocacy organizations, including the Socially Responsible Ag Project, Farm Action, Land Stewardship Project, Dodge County Concerned Citizens. Sonja Eayrs also serves as the business manager for the Traum Family Farm in Dodge County, Minnesota. And so you can get some of her books. She has a table out here, and she will be more than happy to talk with you, I'm sure.
Our story begins in 1892. This is a picture of my great-grandfather, Ed Traum. It was Troyum in Norway. He came with 2 cousins and settled in Dodge County. The other 2 settled in North Dakota. During those years, that's when we were building rural communities. My great-grandfather, Ed, was the chief architect of Little Westfield Lutheran Church. This sits on the same mile square as our family farm. Actually, we're having church service tomorrow. So if you want to make a drive, please, we'd welcome you. This is a picture that was taken at about 1932 on our farm. My father is on the far right with 2 of his sisters. He was one of 10 children, and almost all 10 of those children, except 2, were actually born in the farmhouse. This is our family farm today, and we are actually engaged in production agriculture. The farm used to be much more diversified, and like others, we're part of the 70% like Iowa, where it's production ag. corn and soybean rotation. This is the farm where I grew up. Early signs of consolidation started to occur in the 1990s. This is a young man I used to babysit. This farm is 1 mile north of our farm. He constructed the first swine CAFO, confined animal feeding operation, in 1993. The second one went up in 1998, just 5 years later. So, and no one really understood what was happening. You think about this is over 30 years ago, and the neighbors, and I asked my father, did you understand what was happening? And he said, no, they hadn't. They had no idea. Here's my dad, longtime farmer, and the farmers had no idea what was happening. There were significant changes that were happening in the mid-90s. This is a picture of my sister Shelley and her husband Dave. They farmed outside of our hometown of Blooming Prairie. And Dave was an independent hog farmer. They owned their own hogs. And we had a free market in those days, and Dave would call Hormel or one of the other meat packers to check on pricing. But he noticed that as they were taking their hogs to market, these independents, the big semi-loads coming in from area factory farms, like the one I just showed you, were given priority. And the independents, like Dave and his dad, had to wait anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. They were slowly being denied access to the marketplace. And then in 1998, that was the breaking point for independents like Dave and Shelley. They could no longer take their pigs to market. They were locked out entirely. But they were told, if you build a big factory farm and sign a contract, you can be part of the system and you can deliver your pigs. So that is the system that has been put in place and contributes to all of these other problems, including serious water problems. Our problems were not just limited to hogs. This is a picture that was taken nearly 25 years ago. My family fought installation of what would have been the largest dairy CAFO in the state of Minnesota, just a few miles north of our farm. My father's on the tractor. My mother is in the white jacket. My brother Brad is on his knees there. And our family worked with a group in Minnesota called Land Stewardship Project to fight back. And believe it or not, they were actually successful because they were able to adopt local planning and zoning. Our farm is on a township road. To the north is Ripley, to the south is Westfield. Ripley has local planning. Through local planning, they were able to keep out that huge dairy CAFO, and frankly, a lot of other CAFOs from Ripley. Westfield, on the other hand, Katie by the bar. During that fight of Ripley Dairy that I just described, one night the meeting was moved to this location. This is the old Claremont High School in Claremont, Minnesota. And the neighbors were blindsided. They walked in, and there were nearly 200 chairs set up in the auditorium. Those chairs were occupied by corporate executives from Cargill, Hormel, Land O'Lakes, Monsanto, and other big corporations. They sent all the big boys. This was a corporate power play to intimidate the locals. And most of those locals had to stand up during that meeting and couldn't be seated. Today, this location serves as dormitory housing for area factory farm workers. This is a picture of my mother and dad. This was taken a little over probably 10 years ago. My parents received yet another notice of another swine CAFO going in. This one, just 1/2 mile directly west of our farm. They received a 10-day notice. I'll never forget the call from my dad. I'm driving home from Minneapolis, and my father said, enough is enough. And so I helped my parents find legal counsel, and they started the first of 3 separate legal actions against Dodge County and members of the swine industry. My mother, by the way, had just gone into the nursing home. My mother suffered for many years with advanced Parkinson's disease. This is the facility that we fought. This is a standard feeder operation, 2,400 hogs. It's constructed over a manure pit. That manure pit holds an estimated 1.1 million gallons of manure. There are slats in that building, and the manure goes through. That building that you see to the left is, that's where they put the dead pigs. It's a composting station. And so the dead pigs are also spread on the land. So they're gonna, it's fall harvest right now in Dodge County. Talked to my brother on the way over. We were talking about soybeans. So, but as soon as they get the crop, we harvest, they're going to spread manure. So I would encourage all of you, please take a trip to Dodge County. You need to see this up close. And you probably don't even need to go that far, but we've got to get people educated about what's happening. I was determined to figure out how this thing worked and discovered that this is a corporate pyramid scheme. At the top, you have the multinationals. In the middle, we have integrators. Those integrators own the supply chain, and then they provide feed and veterinary services to the contract growers at the bottom. These are what we used to call farmers. The multinationals in the hog industry include 4 multinationals and that's Hormel, JBS, that's owned by the Brazilians, Tyson Foods, and Smithfield, that's owned by the Chinese. As soon as my parents initiated their first lawsuit, my family started to face unbelievable harassment, intimidation. Here's a picture that I took. This is my brother and I were in the field, and in the bean field pulling some weeds. And just a few hours later, bullet holes sprayed into the stop sign. But that was kind of the easy thing. But garbage in our road ditches, garbage in our driveway, midnight calls to my dad, actually calls that would come through at 2 and 3 in the morning. Lowell, have you changed yet? Now, what do you think of that call coming in? My dad was in his mid-80s, my mother's in the nursing home, and that's the kind of harassment that's going on. But I was determined to figure out, what in the hell happened to my home community? Because I don't recognize it today. And I started to connect with other groups, and because I wanted to check and see, and so I connected with people across the Midwest and discovered that the harassment and intimidation tactics used against my family were the exact same tactics that were used against other frontline families. I include this picture. This is a picture from 30 years ago. Farm Aid just recently provided me with this picture. This is Willie Nelson's bus. They backed it into a corrugated steel shed. Willie Nelson and his staffers were faced with death threats. They cut a hole through the corrugated steel so he could go directly on stage. This is what's happened with corporate consolidation. You can obtain this information. It's available online. It's called Factory Farm Nation. This is put out by Food and Water Watch, but you can see the heavy concentration of livestock on factory farms. And I call Minnesota, southern Minnesota, I call it Iowa North, because we have the same problems that they're having in Iowa. This shows the consolidation. This is information that I obtained from Farm Action. Again, go to Farm Action. They have a lot of data, and you can see the consolidation in the meat packing. So in hogs, over 60% is corporate controlled. I'm sorry, chickens is 60%, hogs is 70%, and beef 80 to 85%. And look at the players: Tyson Foods, JBS, Cargill's in there, Hormel, all the big boys. These are my heroes. This is from an event a few months ago here in western Wisconsin, down in Bay City. This is a bipartisan group, community group. Some of the members are here today, so they're doing fabulous work, going township to township. And what I've discovered in this fight is we're all fighting the same thing. It's community versus corporation. So I don't care what your politics are. We're all here to promote our communities. And I want to leave you with this last line. This is on the back of my book from Senator Cory Booker. The people have the power to fight back. Do not forget that. You all have the power to fight back. Here's my information. If you need to reach me, I'm actually pretty easy to find. If you would, please contact me through my book. I have a contact page. So anyway, thank you. It's a pleasure being here. By the way, I have bookmarks for all of you. So good to be here.
Thank you very much, Sonja. I really appreciate the personal story. And her book really reads like a novel if you've ever read her book. So it's a very easy read. So Sue has something.
Dr. Sessions, our meal's not ready.
All right. Woohoo! All right. We'll have you write them down for the sake of the video here. Write them down, and then I can read them, and we can have somebody answer them when appropriate. So.
Just later.
Yes, they will. Yep. All right, question number 1. There is a proposed large solar installation of 5,000 acres in an area that has largely been used to farm corn. What impacts might there be if this project is installed in a karst region? Who wants to tackle that one? Tim? He can give his 2 cents here.
Yeah, I think I've already had that one. I think I was sitting in my office. Well, you would be taking that land out of row crop would be actually, from the first glance at it, would be a benefit, to groundwater. I'm not totally convinced that there won't be some impacts from runoff from that many panels, because it's a huge installation. And then there's been a question about whether or not, because each of those panels has to be put in on an infrastructure and they have to bore in. Most of the area, the karst or the bedrock is deeper than what they have to put them in. I don't believe they're going to actually drive those supports into bedrock, but I can't really confirm that. They would have to be a question they would have to answer, because I don't believe they would economically be able to bore into bedrock just to put, these are thousands of supports, hundreds per acre for sure. So if they did do that, I'm really still not convinced it would necessarily have a negative effect. There's a little bit of a, what if scenario of if there was a fire, but I haven't found any evidence that that would ever happen. And to that end, to this question, I have reached out to a couple of karst experts to try to offer an opinion. So maybe down the road, maybe I'll have more information.
Sonja, can you discuss Cancer Road?
You'll notice I have three names. So Trom is my maiden name. Eayrs is my husband's name. I was meeting with a journalist who used to be with the New York Times. We're sitting at our kitchen table down at the farm. We're there for a couple hours, and Lisa, you know him, Keith Schneider with the new lead. And after about 2 hours, Keith said, yeah, but Sonja, he said, I really want to do a story about high nitrates and cancer. And I said, well, we're on the wrong end of the county. We need to go to the north end. And I said, there's a road where my husband grew up called Cancer Road. And that's, of course, it's not the official name. But have any of you been to the Hubble House in Manorville? Do you know about that? Or okay. So that end of the county is karst topography, and about same time we were fighting Ripley Dairy, they were fighting installation of a large swine gestational facility on what would later become called Cancer Road. Dodge County has never denied a factory farm, and the neighbors fought and fought and fought and tried to defeat it. And of course, Dodge County permitted that swine gestational facility. Today, it's called County Road B on Highway 57 and County Road B are the coordinates if you're curious. Every single family has been impacted by cancer. A lot of these are blood cancers. These are people who are not necessarily related, but they've all been impacted. And in fact, the Eayrs farm, which is 1 mile to the south, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with breast cancer at age 80. All of those farms, including the Eayrs farm, have extremely high nitrate levels. We couldn't drink the water at the Eayrs farm for years, and we'd get readings 24, 25, 26 milligrams per liter. Eventually, the family had to install a reverse osmosis system to help remove the nitrates. So that's the story with Cancer Road. You can find the article, just look for the new lead, Cancer Road. And of course, same painful problem in Iowa.
Thank you. All right. For Tim and Steve, can nitrates ever be removed from groundwater? And can groundwater ever get truly cleaned back to normal?
That's better.
Come on, Steve. Come on, for the camera.
Okay, repeat the question.
Okay. Can nitrates ever be removed from groundwater, or can it ever truly be cleaned back to normal?
Well, that's a tough question. I think if you're talking about taking groundwater from the ground and cleaning it, that's what basically reverse osmosis does. You know, and I was a little shocked on a conservation tour when Tim told us a couple years ago that a lot of subdivisions are going in now and the homes are being fitted right from the start with reverse osmosis. Not a good thing. The other thing I could tell you, there's villages that I've worked with that have tried to tackle this problem. And I fear a little bit for Village of Roberts, knowing their nitrate levels. I used to work down and be on faculty with the university in Stevens Point. And down there in the Central Sands, we're talking real nitrate problems. Well, the village of Plover, who was in our wellhead protection project area, when I was down there working, put in a reverse osmosis system for the village to clean up that groundwater and clean up that nitrate. And I want to tell you, at that time, and that was over 20 years ago, that village, it costed them $10 million for a reverse osmosis system for that little village down there. And it was about $1 million annual maintenance. So that's what we're talking about in terms of cleaning up groundwater. In terms of the second part of the question, I think it's possible, but you have to factor in that it takes quite a while for that groundwater to become contaminated in the first place. And what that means to clean it up is you really have to look at what are the land uses, what is the management practices of that land that's contributing to the nitrate. If you know that and you can change those land uses and those management practices within the recharge area of our wells, then you probably stand a good chance of improving the water quality over time. But again, it's going to take some time because it took some time to get contaminated in the first place. The other thing that really I'd like to mention that hasn't been talked about much is, years ago, and it wasn't that long ago, most of the farmers that I worked with and continue to had small to medium-sized farms. They had what we called solid or semi-solid manure. You could put it on the landscape, and chances are it really didn't go anywhere. Now we're dealing with liquid manure. That's an entirely different animal in terms of its impacts on water quality, surface water and groundwater. Used to work very closely with a fellow in DNR. He talked a lot with us counties, worked with us county conservationists. And he told me, or he mentioned to our group that liquid manure or liquid waste of any kind, either stored or spread on the land in cars, just does not mix. So I don't know, I just thought I'd mention that because it's such an important factor, not only the size of these large farms, but we're dealing with liquid manure, in most cases probably 95% or more water. That's what we're dealing with.
Thank you very much. Let's see, we have one. Okay. All right. Where does the nitrates come from in manure?
Well, remember I mentioned the water cycle. Nature moves in cycles. You got the water cycle, you got the nitrogen cycle, you got a phosphorus cycle, sulfur cycle. Nature moves in cycles. If we would just get that in our heads, and that expression, what goes around comes around. So if you're familiar with the nitrogen cycle now, basically what happens when that manure is spread on the field, it's an organic form, some of it's in inorganic form in the form of nitrate or ammonium. But over time, then, when it gets put on the soil, on the field, that nitrogen, organic nitrogen, and some of the other inorganic nitrogen, like ammonia, given the conditions, is it's basically transformed to nitrate. Plants can only take up nitrate or ammonium. So those are the forms of nitrogen that are available to plants. So that the manure over time then would break down to other forms of inorganic nitrogen, and that's where you get the nitrate from. Did I answer the question?
All right. I'm going to give this one to Tim. What is a BMP in agriculture? Because some conservation guy mentioned it. And what is the corporate advantage of getting rid of independent producers?
You're putting me on the spot here, because if I can't answer that, I'm in trouble. Best management practices, and it's all BMPs. And I'll try to basically, we have good data on practices that farmers can use. The problem is that we have such variation in the terrain and people's operations that it's almost impossible to prescribe what practices should be used across the landscape. So that choice is allowed, up to the individual operator. And so what is a best management practice for one situation may not apply to another situation. So in general, practices that would be considered BMPs would be testing so that you put the right amount of nutrients on your field. That would be a BMP. However, testing in the fall, when you're growing the corn next July and June, what's the relationship there? So even within what's called BMP, like testing so that you put the right amount of nutrients in, there's a lot of refinement that can happen. You can do better testing. What has happened, in my humble opinion, in the world of BMPs is that oftentimes people in the farm community feel they're doing the best that they can, but really there's a whole world of refinement that can happen if the correct attitude is taken. And I do see farmers doing that. I see them doing incredible amounts of refinement. It's just not across the board. And so hopefully that helped define that. So basically it's the best that can be done on a specific field. That's the best management practices.
Thank you. I think I'll let Sonja maybe answer this next one. What is the corporate advantage of getting rid of independent producers, or if Dr. Jones wants to weigh in on that too?
It's market control. So, and what we're seeing is that what we've witnessed actually over the past 25, 30 years with the harassment and intimidation tactics that my family's experienced and other frontline families, we're now seeing that front and center on a national basis. And so what do they have? They have a combination of both market control and political control. And don't forget it. I think Chris would agree with me. And Iowa, unfortunately, is like the sad story about that combination of both market and political control. So that's what they have to gain. By the way, do some research on JBS. JBS, the Crooked Batista brothers, they bought off $150 million to curry favor and bought off politicians in Brazil a few years ago, paid off I think it was 2,000, close to 2,000 politicians. It was about $100,000 each. And JBS, by the way, was the largest contributor to Trump's inauguration. They tried for years to get listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Guess what? They're now listed on the New York Stock Exchange. They're going to use our system to get financing and take this system, and increase their footprint.
We're hearing more about microplastics in the food and water supply. How bad is it? Water recharge.
Yeah, DNR on the Wisconsin DNR site, I don't know about Minnesota, but they keep a pretty current listing and I don't know about the mapping, but a fairly current listing from year to year, which water bodies are impaired. And then, as Tim mentioned before, which water bodies come off the impaired list. So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, if you're talking about well recharge areas, I mostly deal with those connected with public water supplies. And so if you're looking at well recharge areas for a public well, local state agencies like the DNR in Wisconsin to do what's called source water assessments on all the public water supplies. And basically what that means is you define the recharge area, and then you look at all the contaminant sources within that recharge area. That's what's called a source water assessment. And that's as far as DNR went, basically, with our public water wells. It's up to the local folks now, the people in charge of that well, the municipality like the Village of Roberts, to take it to the next step or steps. And these are the next steps. You would have a good ongoing source water assessment to know what contaminant sources you may find in your well. And then what you're supposed to be doing as a local municipality, if you're really concerned about the health and safety of your citizens, is put together what's called a source water protection plan. Once that plan is in place, then if you want to take it to the next level, where you really have some protections on those wells, is and this occurs quite a bit now with new wells, but it's really the older wells that I'm mostly concerned about, because in most cases what I've seen is an old, outdated source water assessment, and that's as far as it's gone. So if you really want good protection on a public well, you really should have a source water assessment ongoing. You should have a source water protection plan. And then a lot of communities now are adopting what are called source water protection ordinances, where you actually have regulations in place for land uses, for management of those lands within the recharge area of the wells. You know, the other thing I'd like to add real quick is, if you remember the recharge areas that I showed you on that graphic, a lot of the recharge areas that I'm seeing that are drawn out on these public wells, even with a good wellhead protection plan and ordinance, they may only go out 10 or 25 years. Well, in some cases, I'm seeing public wells that are 75, 100 years old. So I'm wondering, why aren't you drawing those recharge areas out as far as that well is going to be in operation? That's another big issue, folks. So,
How often are these areas measured and monitored?
hopefully, the source water assessments that I think that's referring to is an ongoing thing. But unfortunately, with the village boards, city councils, town boards, you know, I think it's just out of sight, out of mind. I guess I would urge you, if you're in a community with a public water supply, that you work with the local folks to make sure that those source water assessments are current, and also that they go the distance of protecting the wells and the public by having a protection plan and a protection ordinance.
Thank you very much. All right, I think this is an easy one for Tim. How deep should a soil test sample be for nitrates, phosphorus, or ammonia? How deep should a soil sample be?
I think for phosphorus, it's usually a first-foot sample, and that's good. For nitrate is not generally, they can do testing for nitrate in the first foot, second foot, third foot. We've done it. It's just that nitrate doesn't stick around very long, and so a soil sample is not a super useful tool to plan your whole season. Usually what you do is you plan out your total amount that you anticipate using, and then at a strategic time in the season, like right in the middle of June, you take a pre-side dress test and look at what's there, and then you adjust what you were going to do. Like if you know you need 150 pounds, you might put 120 on, or you might put 160 on, but you adjust that application mid-season. So that's where most of the work is being done now, is mid-season tests that adjust the program. And when people have done that, we've seen easily able to shave 20 to 50 pounds per acre off of what they've applied. So and then there's even some advanced work being done on what's called like the Haney test. It's like biological tests on what's being released from the soil. So as it turns out, we had to rediscover in the 2000s that if you take good care of your soil, it takes good care of you. And it seems to have, people have known that for a long time, but there's new emphasis now on biological tests that predict what's going to come from that organic fraction. And that apparently is very important if you're doing a lot of soil quality practices such as cover crops, no-till farming, and those kinds of things. The traditional approaches don't predict how much nutrient you need. Some of these biological tests apparently are the key to reducing nutrient application. So, of course, we're promoting the heck out of those and everything else.
Thank you. I think this next one, Tara, because you guys just held the Solar Farm Information Center session. Is the solar farm spoken about a contiguous 5,000 acres or scattered smaller acres spread over a larger land area? Yeah. I think for the camera. Yeah. For the camera.
So when you have larger fields, right? And in industrial fashion, when you are trying to do economies of scale, you are looking for the big contiguous pieces that you have. So we don't have 5,000 acres of contiguous area, but they are very large chunks of fields. St. Croix County has big square fields, and that's not like we have in Pierce County, my hometown, where it's the hills and lots of tiny fields, but it's more contiguous than one might expect. Still patches of it, if that makes sense.
All right. We're going to let Tara get started. Did I already read your bio? I didn't read your bio yet, did I? She is the Wisconsin Farmers Union Director of Conservation and Stewardship. She connects the many conservation-focused projects of WFU to help promote win-win scenarios that benefit farmers, our food system, and our environment. These projects include grassroots efforts of membership committees focused on natural resources, partnering with staff projects to serve our Watershed program, rural energy systems, and enhancing the connection between healthy food systems, communities, and the environment. She grew up raising livestock, including horses, sheep, alpaca, and cattle. She has a degree from the University of Minnesota Morris in environmental studies and psychology. She currently lives in Pierce County. Tara, go ahead.
That was a longer bio than I'm used to. Thank you, Kim. I thought I sent you a shorter bio than that. Thank you so much, everyone, for having me. Thank you for quieting down and for clapping. I was given 10 minutes, so someone give me a 2-minute warning and I will panic, and I'm going to dive right in. All right, so normally I give kind of a talk on just like, here's what soil health is and here's what the practices are. But this year we're trying to lead more into our bread and butter of the Wisconsin Farmers Union, which is how are farmers being impacted by consolidation and how that is enhancing our water quality concerns and all sorts of other things. So I'm going to talk about the state of consolidation in agriculture. I'm going to talk about how farming for soil health can improve water quality quite quickly. And then I'm going to start going into our vision for a better food system and how the average consumer can interact with that. We're going to go real fast. I'm going to try to talk slow, but we're covering a lot of information. So as has been alluded to by our previous speakers, currently 4 firms control 86% of the corn seeds and 76% of the soybean seeds in America right now. So let's think about the amount of choice that our farmers who are growing commodities have in what they are able to access. 4 firms account for 84% globally of herbicide and pesticide market. So again, when you think about the amount of dollars invested in these companies and how much control farmers actually have, what actual competition and capitalism looks like, we are seeing that these are not correct numbers. If you're looking at those 4 farms in the world, we know that our farmers here probably have far fewer options than 4, which is not a lot of options. And then we also see that when these corporate conglomerates start investing in farmers, what they want is for that farmer to continuously need them, right? So we have a cycle of dependency created when you have seed firms that are then dependent on the herbicide and the fertilizer. What those corporations actually want is seeds that really need a lot of fertilizer and really need a lot of herbicide to thrive. If you can get really, really big corn, your farmer can be happy that they have high yields. It doesn't necessarily break out to a lot of profit for that farmer. So then you get a cycle of dependency and debt. And this is from OpenSecrets.org. This is, as of 2024, the amount of millions of dollars that agricultural and agri-industry played into campaigns. So if we can see the number is continuously increasing, and we have a huge jump right after COVID when we saw a bunch of people investing in local foods again, and also when the Farm Bill was being renewed. So that lower number is because we only had one quarter so far measured. So we are seeing that there is a lot of political influence and a lot of money to be made by agribusiness. So what does that mean for farmers? Well, it shaves out their margins, right? How do you make a living in farming when you don't have any competition between the people who are providing your basic supplies? It gets harder. So we have currently in America the smallest number of farmers that we have had since 1850. So we have fewer and fewer farms. We have lost, and you might say, well, that's just progress, fewer people farming. In 2017 to 2022, we lost 30% of our dairy operations. In Wisconsin alone, it's actually been higher than that. So while we actually have more cattle, we have fewer farmers on the land working those cattle. The other thing that, this is very personal stories here. So what does it take to support a family farm? And part of my reason for covering this is because we need to remember that the farmers are not making evil choices, right? As people have heard me say, there's no farmer twisting their mustache and going, I'm going to poison the water today, Margie, right? They are trying to make sure that they are able to make a living, right? And they have a lot of pride with that, right? They were raised on Farmers Feed America. Farmers tend to be political darlings, and we have a sense of farmers as innately part of the American structure, right? At the same time, what does it take to support your family? I have asked from my cousin in Iowa, who runs my paternal family farm, what would it take for you to just let your husband come home and also farm full-time alongside you? And she said, we need 1,000 acres. And I was like, 1,000 seems like a lot of acres to have to run in order to just support your family on a commodity scale. I asked a farmer in River Falls the same question. He had an off-farm job. And I said, man, do you want to farm just full-time? And he said, absolutely, but I need 1,000 acres. And I said, again, 1,000 acres seems like a lot of acres. I have talked to farmers in North Dakota. I have talked to farmers in Indiana. This is a nice, round, memorable number. A lot of people say in commodity corn and soybean farming, you need 1,000 acres if you want to support your family fully. Be able to pay for your health care, not have to have your spouse go out and subsidize your everything, right? When we think about that 1,000 acres, we might say, well, that's just a lot of land, but that's the way it goes. Why don't we have more people going into farming? Well, if we think about $7,000 an acre, which is very low for Iowa, quite mid-range, well, getting on the high side here for St. Croix County area, that's $7 million of land assets. So if you're saying, I want to farm full-time, but if I wanted to support my family on it, I would need access to $7 million of assets. Plus, you're going to need the equipment. Let's add another $1 million onto that for a good combine planter, storage, all of that facility. Let's not forget your operating loan, which you're going to have to get every year. That can be $500,000, $1 million, depending on where you are in your operation. So in terms of how would we get young farmers able to enter this system, it is laughably impossible, right? And that is why so many of the farmers that we see are aging, right? And also most of the farmers that we work with happen to be multi-generational farmers, right? They are working with the experience and resources of the generation before them. The other part of the system, because farmers have been told that they have to work more acres and have smaller margins because industrial agriculture then can make more of that profit, the financial system is also set up for the commodity market. So when I talked to a banker in Baldwin about a decade ago now, I said, well, what are you doing for diverse farmers, like who have a diversified crop? And they said, oh yeah, we do have some diversified crop farmers. We have dairy farmers who are growing their own corn. I was like, that's not what I meant. He didn't even understand the idea of a diverse crop farm. We have farmers who are saying they can get a farm credit loan for $5 million to grow $4 corn. The break-even point for corn right now is about $4.16, and that's for you not to run at a loss for that year. So if you are projected to make a loss, you can still get a $5 million operating loan from Farm Credit. you have to fight tooth and nail for a much more competitive, smaller whole pot of money if you wanted to get $500,000 to build a value add facility. That would allow you then to have people come directly to your farm or take out a middleman and start selling something that was food that people could eat. So again, we're talking about a full system that is not supporting of actual that way that we picture the food system or the agricultural industry to work. So many people have seen me give this presentation before. If we're talking about soil health, there's farmers who are stuck in this commodity system who they're saying, I am going to try to break that cycle of dependency. I'm going to still need some fertilizer. I'm going to still need some herbicide, of course, but I'm going to start getting my soil healthy so that those free resources, I'm going to protect that resource and I'm going to make it better for the future generation. These are the four kind of main things that we do. People asked about, oh my gosh, 2 minutes left. Okay, here I go. So we get better soil from that. We have 49 groups in Wisconsin for producer-led watershed groups that are only focused on how we can adopt more practices, and farmers are teaching each other and incentivizing each other for how they can do this. This is their test plots. We're burying underwear just to help farmers realize that their soil is actually alive and breaking down things, and we want to get more out of that. And then we even have landowners who are encouraging their renters, so non-farming landowners encouraging their renters. This is Dennis Ireland in River Falls showing his buffer that was protecting the river. We also have more farmers trying to work even further out of the system. This is Martin Larkinson in Minnesota. He has an oats mafia where he is coming up with a way that he could incorporate a new crop so he's not so dependent. It's a much better crop for water quality, and it's a way to diversify his farm. However, we cannot have a regenerative agriculture. We can't have regenerative agriculture unless the full system is supporting that regeneration, right? So if our farmers are rearranging their farms to slightly improve something in a fully broken system, we can only make so much progress. As Tim noted, 57% decreases in water quality pollution with 100% of farmers doing everything they possibly could on their own farms. That's not a huge thing, and that's a huge ask if we were going to think every farmer was going to do something. So what we actually need is the full system of consumers, considering the earth, having our producers supported and working together, and the full community working within that cycle. So that looks more like a diversified family farm landscape, right? Where we have livestock on the land, where we have integrated crops that are growing with that livestock from year to year on much different systems. And we also have fewer food miles going, right? We have a connection of community between the users and the consumers. And this is one of our pictures from our local food purchase association. Sorry, Sue, I'm going to go so fast, but a lot of people don't think that this is realistic or that you can support local food. We have a ton here. Jamie's going to cover some great opportunities. Blue Ridge Growers is right here, River Falls, Hudson area. If you wanted your fruit, Rising Sun Farm, you can get meat and vegetables right there in River Falls as well. We have a local food directory. I pulled up the Hudson zip code, and these are the number of farms. This is covering dairy, this is covering vegetables, this is covering fruit, and this is covering meat and eggs. So you can get most of your food pyramid. We still have some gaps in grains. I can find some within the state, but locally it's very hard to do local grains. We're just really not used to paying a lot for our grain calories, right? And we don't grow rice here very well. We also have the farmfreshatlas.org that can also identify producers in your area. So if you're doing this, you're going directly to the consumer, and that is hugely enhancing the margin for farmers, right? If you are able to buy directly from them, they are not being affected by those industrial agriculture models. They're not being affected by the consolidation vertically and the horizontal consolidation that we're seeing across the market. You can also, it is hard to go to a farmer every time you need groceries, of course, so you can get a subscription to many options. These are two farms in St. Croix and Dunn County where you can get a vegetable subscription for the growing season. Oxheart Farm in Hager City also has a vegetable subscription as well as a milk subscription. You can also do beef and pork and chicken subscriptions as well. And then for folks who aren't able to change that much beyond what we're used to growing up with, there is still a grocery experience where you can support local foods as well, or regenerative agriculture for foods that you can't find locally. So we do have a lot of options. People might say that it's a challenge, but there's a lot to be gained from this. Sorry for covering so much so quickly, but Jamie is going to be next up to talk more about this.
All right, thanks, Tara. We'll let Jamie and Marianne go, then we'll probably take some questions. How about that? So, Jamie is the local food coordinator for the St. Croix Valley Food Alliance, a humanitarian at heart. Jamie is grateful for the opportunity to support the well-being of local farmers. Throughout her career, she has worked at the intersection of local food, the natural world, and communications. With a degree in graphic design and certificates in permaculture, herbalism, and trauma-informed yoga, she brings a holistic perspective to her work. When she's not working, you'll often find her on the trails of the St. Croix Valley with her two huskies, Cedar and Louie. All right, Jamie.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here today. I'm with the St. Croix Valley Food Alliance, and we are located in Polk and Burnett counties, and we're a group of, the organization is a group of 31 small, local, sustainable farms that have been in operation for a median of 12 years throughout our farms. So really experienced farmers that have been doing earth-friendly, water-friendly practices for many years. Next slide, please. Oh, technical difficulties. So originally the Food Alliance was formed. We've been an organization for 3 years, but it was originally formed when there was a large hog factory that was going to be in Burnett County. And the folks that are the founders of the Alliance fought against that, and then also noticed their strength within the community as food producers, providing food that is oftentimes not certified organic, but with organic practices.
Sorry. STI the toxic. Oh, there we go. That's cool. Thank you so much.
So yes, we were founded in 2022 by the it's a grassroots initiative formed from the Polk and Burnett chapter of Wisconsin Farmers Union. So think like St. Croix Falls all the way up to Siren and Amory. It covers a large area, and here you can see Marcy speaking on the No Factory Hog Farm, which everyone worked against there. Excellent. Awesome. So our mission is to strengthen and promote a thriving, resilient, and equitable local food economy within the St. Croix Valley. This is Christy of Bee's Knees. She is one of the founders of this organization. And through this, there are so many parts to supporting these different farms in different ways. So we kind of focus on the food cycle here: grow, prepare, and share. And this is a photo from our winter farmers market, which has been a huge part of our organization that I'll talk more about in a little bit. So my role as local food coordinator a big part is marketing and communications for the farmers. As we know, farmers are extremely busy people that work themselves, they're super hard workers. And so we saw that in the formation of the organization that there was a gap in the marketing and being able to sell food. So that's a huge role that we play. Another role is I'm working to connect with schools, hospitals, and other institutions in our counties, in Polk and Burnett counties, to really keep our food within the community. So many of our farmers do drive to Minneapolis at least once a week to go to farmers markets to sell their food. So we are really trying to focus on how can we benefit not only everyone through local nutrients and healthy food, and also economically benefit our direct community as well. Another really exciting thing that I'm working on my role is to create a toolkit for other communities to implement this type of work as well. Here are two of our awesome farmers. We have Emily of Whetstone on the right,
and Ayla of Blackbrook, Ayla and James and their son. The St. Croix Valley Food Alliance farmers are really dedicated and passion-led folks that have been doing this work for many years, like I said. They provide food to the community, and they have the future in mind in all of their sustainable practices as well. So they're farming to provide for their families, the community, and for future to come. They also create jobs, of course, too, in our community. So we were lucky enough to get a grant last year that allowed us to do a feasibility project and really talk to the farmers and get some stats and understand where we're at as a group here. So collectively, the farmers are sustainably stewarding 1,800 plus acres within our 2 counties. We last year grow the 259,000 pounds of vegetables were grown within these 31 farms, and we've made over $2 million impact last year as well in our community. And this just gives you a better idea of where we're at. Here's the St. Croix River is the blue line. And so we do span, the farmers of the Alliance do span a lot of of our 2 counties right along the St. Croix River. And these sustainable practices are inherently supporting our watershed, and their clean farming practices are supporting clean water. And these are a couple of just examples of the types of practices that would be considered sustainable that a lot of our farmers are practicing. And there's so much more to it too, right? Rotational grazing, perennial crops, a lot of these kind of overlap to like soil building and crop diversity, low till or no till, mulching, utilizing cover crops, and pesticide and herbicide free gardening. So a lot of this kind of works together to be able to create this more natural system that won't be causing harm like a lot of the farming that's happening now. And these are also practices that are supporting local food and being able to feed people locally, which of course has so many benefits to it, as I'm sure most of you know. A couple more of the programs that we do. This year, we're really proud of the Farmer to Food Bank program. We worked with the Good Acre, and we were in the St. Croix Valley Food Bank, and we were able to donate 4,000 pounds. And through a grant, our farmers were paid for that. So it was between 3 farms, and they split between the 3 farms, were able to get $10,000, which is amazing to create that type of stability for a small farm. And that's just one piece of their puzzle, of course. We also do the POP program, which is a program at our farmers markets that gives kids free tokens, also through a grant. And then they're able to go to a farm stand and purchase produce directly from farmers. This is great. We do it every other week in St. Croix Falls at the St. Croix Falls Farmers Market. You'll also find a lot of the farmers that are part of the Alliance at the farmers market in St. Croix Falls, which is Saturday, 10 to 1. And then we're also very excited about our Winter's Farmers Market. We're bringing our POP program there this year as well. This has been a great community and social gathering. It's been creating more sustainability as well for our farmers throughout the year to be able to have farmers markets through the winter. So we'll have we have November, December, Abrahamson Nursery hosts us, and then in January, February, March, we do once a month at the Acreage in Osceola. And we have fresh local food by Fiddlehead Kitchen, like a local chefs that create with local food, and storage crops and different, also, some sheepskins and different things that the farms create, other products as well. So
That's been really amazing for our community, and we've had up to 400 people at one of these events. So it's been greatly impactful, and it's really healthy for all of us to get out of the house in the wintertime too and see each other. So that's something we're really proud of. And we have 3 types of memberships. We have, for our farmers, it's just $25 a year to join. And then we have, like I said, marketing perks. We're working with a mental health grant. We're going to create some clinics for the farmers this winter. We're still identifying what exactly that's going to look like. Partner member is for business membership. We have decals that people can put outside of their businesses saying that they support local food. And then we have our local champion, which is our community member, people that support and benefit from the local food and the work that we do with the Alliance. And just one final quote here. We believe that the cycle of a healthy culture begins and ends with food. What we eat, how it's grown, how it's prepared, and how it is shared. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Mary Ann is one of our speakers who are doing things differently. She was a member of a citizen member on the board, right? Looking at the Maiden Rock, who enacted operational ordinances to protect public health and safety, as well as property values, in light of the Ridge Breeze Dairy getting preliminary approval from DNR to expand the herd up to 6,500 cows. So,
thank you. Reminder that out on the table by Sonja's books, there's a fact sheet that you can, if what I'm saying today is interest of you, there's a fact sheet that you can pick up. It's spreading season in Wisconsin, and that means that if you live near CAFO, the CAFOs have begun to empty their manure lagoons, and they are spreading with their huge tankers up and down County Road CC. So as Sonja invited you to go to Dodge County, Minnesota, I'm going to invite you to come on down to southern Pierce County, CC, kind of between Maiden Rock and Plum City. It might be not uncommon at all to see 40 manure hauling tankers on County Road CC, and then they'll go off into township roads and whatnot. And by the way, there's some little business cards on the table also, and those business cards have the highway patrol number on it, the county sheriff's department. So if you see any inappropriate driving, texting while driving, manure tankers, that's our favorite one. If you can document that safely with a cell phone, go for it. Thank you in advance. So then the other thing you can do while you're checking out spreading season is to swing by Ridge Breeze site. It's going to, well, it's got a permit to expand to become the largest CAFO in western Wisconsin. That is under review right now in a contested case. I'll talk about that in a sec. But you will see their 11.5 acre barn going up right now. And if you've not seen a mega dairy like that Yep.
Great.
Yep. So there we go. It's not uncommon at all to see the 40 tankers hauling on township and county roads. And these are, I don't have to tell you, you all know that these township roads were never built to withstand the weight of those haulers.
Okay.
So our study group settled into our work, and it's just absolutely, I'd be remiss if we didn't go through these bullet point by bullet points. These are, the permitting process from the DNR covers surface and groundwater. It does not address air quality. It does not require stormwater or runoff from massive barn roofs to be contained, does not require a surety bond in case of bankruptcy that protects taxpayers from cleaning up industrial ag messes, does not require public notification of a manure spill, does not require public notification in case of an infectious outbreak amidst the herd, does not require a robust carcass disposal plan in case of a catastrophic event, does not require systematic well water testing within the neighboring community, does not require analysis of the operation's impact on property values, does not require a fire plan. There are no training courses to fight industrial ag fires. And I see 2 minutes, Sue, so all right, I'm going to skip. We're going to jump ahead. So it's a three-legged stool. The safety of our industrial ag system relies on the DNR, the county, and self-reporting by the industrial operator. You ask yourselves, what can go wrong? Okay. There is 340 CAFOs in Wisconsin. They have a very complex document called a nutrient management plan that describes where and how much the waste will be spread on fields. There is 1.5 DNR personnel that reviews those nutrient management plans for 340 CAFOs. Okay? So we gathered local findings. These are scientific, pulled from GIS systems specific to the town. And through that, we learned that 68% of maiden rock soil were limited, had limited capacity to absorb liquid manure and processing waste. One of the very detailed maps that we had. We compiled industry research and noted our town strategic plan that put a high value on protecting natural resources. Our study group concluded that the scale of industrial ag operations has exceeded the county and state's capacity to safeguard our public health, our water, our roads, our property values, and our soil. Local findings, everything I've mentioned came together. We had a public hearing. Following the public hearing, Maiden Rock Town Board voted unanimously, gonna say it again, Maiden Rock's Town Board voted unanimously to adopt the operations ordinance. Maiden Rock became the first town in Pierce County to do so. Oh, but wait, there's more. Just a few months later, Isabel Township became the second town in Pierce County to adopt an operations plan. And now with Grow, towns in Pierce and Pepin County are looking at forming study groups and, you know,
It's something we ask commonly to our local food producers is what can we do to help you make your farm stable, right? How do we make your farm a sustainable farm from a human perspective, not just from the environmental perspective? And they're working really hard, and they'll say, well, there's really only a threshold of the local population that you can expect being willing to do this, right? So this is a super good question on what we're doing. And I think the answer lies in lots of different things. It's understanding that there are externalities to the fast food system, and by fast food system, I do mean also the cheap food system of an Aldi's or other programs, right? Your Clover Valleys, your Family Fresh brands, all of those that are made to make the food as cheap as possible. And so I do think part of it is just education. Part of it is a connection to community is going to increase investment in food. Also seeing food as medicine again, right? When we realize that it is worth investing in our health and enhancing that narrative instead of the way it currently is. I don't want to identify any really bad actors. So I think those are kind of the main pieces. And also just building up the norm, right? It is very, very expensive to pay for food, and we are seeing food costs rising. However, that can also mean that as food costs rise, people are willing to look elsewhere. So this can be one good thing that's coming out of the current tariff system. We also saw that during COVID, many of our producers saw a 30 to 50% bump in their sales. So when we do see changes to society, I think that there are real opportunities for us to promote the investment in local food.
I'll capitalize on that too, just because it's what you get for your money. I mean, I understand that not everybody can vote with their fork. They can't afford that. But those who can, what do you get for your money? You get better taste, better nutrition, more local food, and you're supporting your community. Marianne, this one's for you. Are you connecting to the Wisconsin Association of Towns or other statewide entity to help town boards across the state understand how to work with or on operations ordinances?
Yeah, really, thanks for that question, because I'm super excited to let you know that previously the Town Board Association had not been, is it fair to say, terribly open to the idea? Okay, all right, never mind, you didn't hear that. But the new chair of Pierce County's Town Board Associations is the person who served on our Operations Ordinance Committee. So at least in Pierce County, that'll be happening. What at the state, I don't know, but yeah, would love to talk to him.
People power changes minds, right? Tara and Jamie, have you heard of value-added processors, specifically creameries, who are selectively taking milk from regenerative dairies or non-CAFOs? Have you heard of value-added processors?
I try.
You try that again? Specifically creameries is what they're talking about, but...
So yes, that is a thing. We are also hearing of, there was a Climate Smart grant, which is now been defunded, but it was looking at that precise question in terms of the nutrient density of regeneratively grown dairy actually impacting the regenerative or the nutrient density of the cheese and milk coming out of the dairy. So it is definitely within the industry. There is one up in Polk County. I cannot remember the name. Yeah, Cosmic Wheel is one of them. There are a couple of others too. So yes, we do have creameries and local CSA. I actually was part of Cosmic Wheel CSA, so you could get a monthly delivery of cheese. So it's definitely possible. There's also not a regenerative certification that's widely accepted, I would say. So one benefit of this cheese process is actually just to talk to your farmer. Because again, Oxheart Creamery too in Hager City is doing all the regenerative practices on their dairies. And they are, we believe, the smallest certified creamery in the state with 3 head of milking cattle.
Maybe you want this next one too. Does the state offer incentives for implementing regenerative and or sustainable practices? And what are the least? Yeah.
What's the last part? Sorry.
Least cost prohibitive.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So first of all, are there incentives? Yes, there are a ton of incentives. They are changing target right now at the federal level, especially with the government shutdown. Normally, in a functioning federal government, we have the Natural Resource Conservation Service. I've previously worked in an NRCS office. They provide great incentive programs for cover crops, which is one of the best management practices. That's when you see a green field that wasn't corn, they're planting another crop there to protect the soil, scavenge nutrients. Really, really fantastic. They also do cost share for nutrient management planning. They also do cost share for waterways, which can reduce 97% of erosion. So NRCS is our federal version that's providing that. Our counties, as Tim can speak to, have great programs going on too to help support. He just told me about a producer who signed up for 1,500 acres of cover crops, and we're doing more and more of that. Like I mentioned, our producer-led watershed groups, which we have 49 in the state, they actually receive 20 to 40,000 grants, dollar grants from the Department of Ag Trade and Consumer Protection in Wisconsin, DATCAP, and that's where those farmers are actually running their own incentive program within their neighborhood. So they're saying, what do we want to pay for cover crops? $10 an acre going to change anyone's mind? They won't be, yeah, probably $10 an acre, which is much lower cost, much lower cost share than what the federal government is paying. But when you have a voluntary neighborhood program and it's just those face-to-face conversations, that actually makes a big difference. And we find it's significantly more cost effective. So we have federal and state support, county support, and neighbor-to-neighbor support. So there's quite a bit going on. Cover crops is probably the biggest best management practice that we hear people talking about as like a very different thing. But there's field buffers, there's waterways. So when you see the corn and then just a big strip of grass, that's the farmer taking land out of production just to protect the water.
And master gardeners are talking about cover crops in their gardens over winter now too. So it's not just for farmers. What is the most impactful thing an average citizen can do to help mitigate these harmful practices we've learned about today? Besides what Mary Ann and her people have done, right? Is there any other thoughts?
I get so bad setting up.
What's the most impactful thing an average citizen can do to help mitigate the harmful practices that we heard about?
To help mitigate it. So from my lens, I suppose with the Food Alliance is to support local food, support local farms. If it feels like out of your scope to, get into growing your own food, then that's definitely the way to go as well. I think there is a lot of education that needs to happen and a lot of habit change that needs to happen, right? I live in St. Croix Falls. Like we really don't have that many different food options or grocery store options. So so it's like a relearning process of, okay, I'm taking it seriously that these are my groceries that I'm purchasing from the farmer's market or the co-op. And this is where my money is going instead of Walmart. It's one of our food options, right? So just being really intentional about it, and that can open you up to new recipes, and it's a lot because we're also busy too. So it's like just start small, really, is what I say.
And I'll concur with that because that's really how I've done it in my life. I just tackle one thing at a time. I don't try to change the whole thing at once. Just take one thing at a time. We got time for these? All right. Are there attempts to preempt local ordinances and turn Wisconsin into Iowa? Of course. I don't know if Mary Ann wants to speak to that, but we were told, Sustained Rural Wisconsin Network, which I'm a part of, we were told that they are planning on introducing a bill in Wisconsin to preempt local ordinances for this very thing. They're planning on that yet this session. So the answer is, unfortunately, yes. That's why we've started conversations with some of our legislators. We've been targeting some of the ones that are on the Ag Committee or some of the other committees we think might be bringing these bills through. Maybe Lisa wants to talk to this more than I do, but but anyway, long story short is it's coming. So you'll need to be able to reach out ASAP. So listen, stay tuned. We will let you know when we hear that it hits the floor. All right, what needs to happen to convince farmers to opt out of the harmful political cycle of dependency on bailout and voting to protect their futures? Bailout money and voting to protect their futures. What needs to happen to convince farmers to opt out of the harmful political cycle of dependency of bailout dollars and voting to protect their futures? All right. It's Tara Show.
Oh, sorry.
If you're tired of hearing my voice, imagine how I feel. Yes, that is a very good question. I think we live in a capitalist system, and so therefore the answer has to come from an economic perspective at this point. If you want people to opt out of this, you have to have a yes path, which is why Jamie spoke about we have a vision of what we don't want, you have to have a vision of what you do want, right? So we can tell farmers all day long, well, you shouldn't be doing that. And they can say, I'm working my butt off to survive. And the industry has told me what I need to do, and you have only told me what not to do. So we have to create a viable path forward, which is part of why every conversation that we're having now is the pairing of, here are our concerns, and here is our vision for what this can happen, or what this could look like. So to me, it does come back to make something more attractive than that system. So if every family in St. Croix County spent $5 a week only on local foods, that would significantly transform the local food landscape. If you wanted to spend $30 a week on local foods, right, per household, let's say you can change, if everybody did that, by about $10 million. That would very significantly create an incentive for a lot of farmers to say, I don't have to grow. I don't have to become an HR professional to figure out how I'm going to staff this. I don't have to haul trucks in from 50 miles away. If I can do this and I can feed people and I can feel good about my farm at the end of the day, and then I'm passing something on to the future, that would make a huge difference for our farmers.